Welcome to this trail report, where we give you updates on what our current sauna trail adventures have been. A couple weeks ago, I got to try out a new sauna build from someone in our local sauna community, and it was an excellent build and an excellent steam. I'll wait till he's totally done with his build. I'll get some pictures of that for you, and we'll share that on a future trail report. But last weekend, we traveled to Chicago and met our friends Luke and Martha Ripstra and had a chance to use a new public sauna or banya, new to both you and I.
Yeah, it was in Chicago and it was called Sky Sauna or Sky Sauna and Spa. For me, I had used a few public saunas, banyas before, and Luke had used a few with you.
Yeah, I think Luke had just used one at Chicago Sweat Lodge.
Oh, just the one?
Yeah,
Okay.
and then you had used the one in Toronto,
Mm-hmm.
Southwestern Bathhouse.
Yep. And then for Martha, this was her first public sauna that wasn't in somebody's backyard or home. So that was kind of an interesting experience for her, I think.
But what did you think of it?
Well, when I first walked in, I felt like it was very nice. Like the entrance was clean and bright, and there was a board with some prices and kind of some things that they kind of like their rules or policies or whatever. I thought this was interesting. They make you turn in either a wallet or a set of keys. They lock it into a locker and give you the key. That key bonding locker in the locker room. So then I go into the women's locker room, and then I have that for, which I thought was kind of a cool setup. So you can't really leave without getting your stuff.
Yeah, and that's pretty normal for these type of places. Like Chicago Sweat Lodge functions that way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. And then going into the women's locker room actually had its own hot tub, steam room, and sauna that had like a salt wall on two of the walls. It was like the Himalayan pink salt that's supposed to do stuff. I don't know if it does actually, but
it wasn't really a sauna, right?
No, I couldn't throw water on the rocks. There was no buckets to like throw water on the rocks or to wash with. It was dry in there, but I feel like it was a lower temp. I think when Martha and I first walked in, I think both of us thought, I don't know if we're going to work up a sweat. But, we sat in there long enough when we did work up a sweat. So I think it was just kind of a lower temp. And I don't know if that's because it's a woman's one and, whatever. I don't know. I did not use the steam room or the hot tub. I don't really care for steam rooms, and I don't really need a hot tub. I have a sauna, so.
Yeah, and the men's room didn't have any of that. And I think most of the client were men there. It was pretty busy. It was hopping while we were there. It was super busy.
Yeah, I think I was surprised at how busy it was. And like you said, it was mostly men. There were a few women.
Probably maybe 10, 15% women?
Yeah, that's probably about right. And then it was interesting because we sounded the four of us together, in the different rooms, which we'll go into. Towards the end, when I went into the women's locker room, there were like 4 or 5 women in the locker room, hanging out in the hot tub, going in the steam room, chilling in the chairs there. And so, I think on Wednesdays, they have 3 hours from noon to 3 where it's women only. So I think that would be a really fun time to go because there were a lot of men. And I think I was struck also by like the seriousness of them in their sauna and bathing and what they were doing. Like they weren't necessarily there to be like rambunctious or like, like people were in the hot rooms and they were maybe talking amongst themselves, but there wasn't a lot of conversations going on.
Yeah, and the hot rooms were decently hot. There were 2 big banya style hot rooms with masonry heaters. It was difficult to make steam. I think only one had the door kind of cracked, but you were getting a pretty significant amount of heat from the stove. So people had a bunch of oak leaf branches, and we had some as well that we'd soaked the night before. So people were using those, and they were, scraping their skin. One guy had a scraper, waving the towels around.
And one lady, I think, had a glove, like a exfoliating glove on that she was using.
Yeah, so people weren't messing around. So they had those two big hot rooms, a steam room, that was pretty much empty. And then they had a shower area with some pool buckets and showers. It was maybe was it 8 showers?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think it was 4 on each side. And um, they were very clear, like, please shower before you go into the hot rooms, shower before you go into the pool. And there was an employee there that was kind of standing by the shower area. I think he was kind of just keeping an eye on things and making sure that people were doing what they were supposed to be doing.
And then they had a pretty sizable cold plunge. It wasn't crazy cold, but it was good. And then in addition to that, an outdoor pool. And we went in the wintertime, so it was nice and cold out, but the pool was kind of warm.
The pool was heated, and so, which was a very interesting sensation. So we went outside. It was cold outside. Getting into the pool was warm, and it was just so bizarre because my face was nice and cool above the water, but my feet weren't freezing, which is, when you go into a lake or a cold plunge, my feet are always so cold and the rest of me is like still kind of warm. And it was like the opposite this time around. So my feet were actually warm, but my face was still cooling and getting that cold air. I kind of liked it. I never would have thought that I would have liked it because you guys went in, you and Luke, and Martha and I followed. And I was like, I don't know. I didn't know if I was going to like it. I didn't even know if I was going to use it, but it was very interesting. And I think I kind of liked it.
So that was pretty much the facilities. So what were your favorite parts about Sky Sauna in Chicago?
I think one of my favorite parts was probably the cold plunge. It was colder than I expected. And it was nice and big. So at one point when I came out of the hot room, there was probably like 6 or 7 men in the pool, and there's plenty of space between them. It didn't feel crowded. It didn't feel awkward, so I really liked that. I think that might be other than a lake, I think that's probably the biggest cold plunge that I've been in. The heat, I kind of liked the smaller room better. I felt like it was a little bit hotter of the two. You're sitting closer to the masonry heater, and so it gets a little intense, but it was definitely a really nice heat. It definitely was hot. Like, I didn't sit there feeling, oh, I wish this was like 10 degrees hotter. And then there was this little corner, like there was a wall and then maybe like a space of about 4 feet, and then the masonry heater. And we saw a guy go in there at one point. And so we looked at each other, and Christopher was like, oh, I might go check that out. So he left. So I was like, oh yeah, you should. So then he went in there, stood there for a while, and then he came out and he's like, yeah, it's pretty nice. So then when Christopher left, I went in there, and it was actually it was a little bit more intense, but still a very nice heat. Like, I didn't feel like it was sharp.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty intense, like you said. There was maybe like a 3-foot little passageway kind of between the wall and the masonry heater. And this visit to a banya, and I've been to other banyas before, made me think about radiant heat more. There's a big debate in the sauna world about if radiant heat is good or not.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the stove, while the stove is running, it can feel harsh. This didn't feel harsh. It felt deep, and it felt pretty good.
Yeah, I think deep is a really good word. Because when I was sitting on the bench, you're facing the heater. And so, not that my back was cold, but when I went in that little space, I turned my back to the heater, and I put my arms on the wall and just kind of laid my head on the wall and just let it heat the back side of me. And it was such a nice heat. Like you said, just deep, like it just really got into me. And I loved that. I really, really liked that.
Yeah. Any other things that you liked about the place?
The other thing that we had for my first time, Christopher brought in a drink called kvass. He had told me about it because when he went to Toronto, he had tried it. It was like a fermented rye or fermented bread drink. And I'm like, I didn't really understand what it could be like. But I tried it, and I really liked it. It just was like drinking rye bread. It was really good. And then they had a dining area where you could order off the menu. And we got the 3 different soups that they had and some pickled vegetables. And I know that when you sauna or after you sauna, anything that you eat is going to taste amazing. Like it could probably be a leather shoe and it still might be tasty because it just feels so good. You've got those endorphins going and you're feeling good. But I feel like this food was actually good. So we got a borscht soup, a fish soup, and what was the last one?
I'm not sure what kind of soup the third one was. It kind of had like a little bit of an Asian flair, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And then the pickled vegetables, which was all just phenomenal.
Yep.
It was very good.
It has pickled tomatoes, pickled little yellow squash, and pickled chilies, and pickled cucumbers.
Yeah, yeah. It was really good. Very well done. I think, Christopher, you mentioned when you ordered, they were having a hard time understanding you because they didn't speak a lot of English. So there were very few people speaking English the entire time we were there. They were all conversing with each other. I would say Russian or some other, maybe East European, but definitely not English. It was very fascinating. It was really fascinating. And then another thing that was really funny was across the dining room from us, somebody had ordered like it looked like a thick milk drink. And I was like, oh, I wonder what that is. And so Christopher just gets up and walks over there. And I'm like, oh, he's just going to walk by and take a peek. Oh, no, he actually asked them what it was. And I think they were trying to figure out how to explain it in English. So I think what we got out of it was that it was a salted yogurt drink.
Yep.
And then the table next to us a little bit later also had an interesting, like a reddish pinkish drink in a pitcher. And I'm like, I wonder what that is. So Christopher gets up and goes and asks them, hey, what's that drink? And again, they were trying to figure out what the English word for is. And eventually it came out that it was some sort of punch or juice drink or something like that.
Yeah, I'm still not sure what that one was.
I don't know.
But there were all these kind of like subgroups of people hanging out. There weren't tons of people there solo. They were there with friends. There were a few people that were kind of solo, but kind of there as a social meetup and I just would have loved to hang out with them and learn how to sauna how they sounded. But there was lots of interesting food and drink. So anything else that you really loved about it?
There's another observation that I made. So we had gone in with our oak Venix.
Venic is like oak branches that they use to kind of massage each other with or kind of beat each other with. The Finnish word is vita or vasta.
And so I think at one point, Luke was doing it on you. And I think I made a joke to him about like, do it harder or something like that. And I think you said something to me like, I don't think that it's necessarily harder. I think it's about moving the air. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And so there was another man who was laying down and another guy that was doing the oak Venix. When they switched roles, the second guy didn't actually beat him or even really touch him. It was all about moving the air. And he was kind of pulling the air down and then waving the Venix over him to get the air movement. And I had never seen that. I just assumed it was always about like hitting yourself or whatever. And then there was another guy there that was really getting into it and hitting himself and, doing what I thought was kind of the standard thing. But I thought that was really interesting because I think it was after you'd already left that I saw this guy doing it. And I thought, I wonder how that would feel. So I kind of want to do that next time.
Yeah, I saw him doing that. Luke and I saw those guys doing it. And it was just kind of like a light brush, but a really quick and lots of air movement. And it was like this one guy kept doing it for his whole group. So I don't know if they hired him or what, but he was getting a lot of work out. That's hard work in the hot room.
Yeah, because it's already hot. You're already hot and then having to like almost like exercise in there.
So was there anything that you didn't like or that could have been better?
It was a little busy for me, which is a great thing because it just shows that the facility is great. But it was a little busy. I mean, we did go on a Saturday, probably one of their busier times on a weekend. And people were just constantly in and out and doing things. And like, I like to people watch. So it was kind of fun too for me to see all these different people coming in, doing different things. Like you said, like kind of sounding how they sound and learning about that. If the only critique that I had for that place was it was a little too busy, I think I would really like that noon to 3 on Wednesdays when it's women's only.
Yeah, unless it's more busy then, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, it could be.
Yeah, it was, if it was like half the number of people
Yeah.
or 2/3 the number of people, that would have been good. Because sometimes it was hard to find a good spot on the bench. There were a few times where like the upper benches were mostly full when I would have wanted to sit on an upper bench. The only thing else I would say would be that it would be nice if there was more opportunity to make steam
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
There's some banyas that I've been to where it's not really encouraged or people don't really make a lot of steam. And then there's been a few others where we do it more, especially I think when you're using the oak branches or birch branches, it's nice to have some steam in the air to move around. It kind of makes it feel more warm. But otherwise, yeah, the food was really good. The facilities were really good. And what rating would you give this one out of 10?
I would say 9.2.
Is that really what you say? You don't have to say the same thing.
No, I think I would.
Okay.
It was, and the tricky part is like, how have I used a lot of public saunas? I have not, but some of the things for me, it was clean. They had they had the cold water, the showers, the really good food. They had lots of seating for people to hang out in. And yes, it was very busy, but I also felt like there was still enough room to get around and stuff. I loved that it was so multicultural. Like I think I was just surprised at the amount of not English that I heard. So I think I would give it a 9.2. I would definitely go back. Definitely.
Yeah, same. I would also go back. Well, thanks for listening to this trail report. Like I said, we'll have more of these in the future just to kind of keep you guys updated where we're on the trail. And we do have a full episode coming out soon.